I'm Brian McCown. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. I also serve on the Ag Sector Board for the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, and we are just really pleased to have the turnout that we have here this morning on a very important topic to our industry and our region as a whole. And very pleased that Senator Ernst could join us this morning. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Senator.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we'll have a very productive discussion today, and focusing on, of course, trade and what free trade means for the United States. And of course, we have a number of initiatives moving through Congress right now. First and foremost, the USMCA, which is imperative that we get done soon. So we are focusing on that. The House will move first with the USMCA. It does have to come from the House because it is considered a revenue bill. So they will start through their Ways and Means Committee, hopefully have plenty of support there, move it through, and then pass it on to the United States Senate. And I don't see any issues right now. There had been some initial concerns in gathering support in the House, but I think that has gone by the wayside. I think there is plenty of support for moving it now. We just need to continue to encourage the movement. So we hopefully will see this done in short order through the USMCA. Now the next priority, of course, is China and making sure that we get the deal done with China. And that includes, of course, discussions on tariffs as well. And I think we'll have a really good discussion about that today. China, when I last spoke with Robert Lighthizer just a couple weeks ago, he was very encouraging on where we were with China, and he felt that largely negotiations are done. The only issue really remaining out there is enforcement mechanisms. And how do we enforce any trade agreement that's put into place? And that's where China and the United States seems to be butting heads a little bit, going back and forth. But he felt pretty positive about the direction we were going. So again, in short order, I hope that we actually see the deal with China done. Tariffs, that is an issue that needs to be addressed. And the president had said many months ago that once we have deals in place, then we should be able to remove the tariffs. I agree. Let's get these deals in place and let's get rid of these tariffs. What we see right now, pardon me, is a lot of purchasing by China, kind of one-off deals with pork and soybeans. You know, that's great in the short term to help bolster us, but we need long-term resolution, and that means getting the trade deals done. So I remain cautiously optimistic. Things have not moved as fast as I had hoped they would, but I still think that we will see these trade deals done, which will be good news for our manufacturers and good news for our farmers and ranchers. So just want to thank everybody for being here today, and I really look forward to our discussion. I think it'll be very helpful. I'll certainly be ready to take your voices and your concerns back to DC. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Dennis Slater, I'm president of the Association of Food Manufacturers. We're based in Warren, Wisconsin, but we've met several times on other discussions. And, I appreciate your comments on tariffs, especially the U.S. with Canada and Mexico. This is very concerning to us. A year ago, we had some of these meetings, and here we are again, another year later, still having this discussion. I think the manufacturers represent about 1,000 manufacturers in the U.S. They've done a good job up to now trying to accommodate this, but in a long-term plan, it's very difficult for them to stay competitive, especially in export markets. The timing of these, with Mexico, Canada especially, is this something imminent, or is this something holding it up?
Well, no, there's nothing holding it up right now other than the House itself. Language has to be presented to the House. The text of a bill, it does have to come from the administration. Then they'll take it up through Ways and Means. The assumption is it will be passed out of Ways and Means, go to the floor, and then be voted on. So there is a timeline, and my staff has presented me with a timeline. And there are different time hacks that have to be met in order to keep it filibuster-proof, amendment-proof. So I imagine that the House will follow those timeframes, but the administration needs to be working with the House on how to get this through. But once it's presented, I don't see any issues, and, which is better, because about a month or so back, I would have said we'd have trouble getting it through the House. But I think just a lot of great effort has been out there with a number of different groups, really talking to their members and explaining the importance of the USMCA and why it gets done. So I think we've started to see a lot more of our House members come on board. So once the ball gets rolling over there, I don't think we're going to see any issues.
Thank you, Dennis. I think we have other business owners around the table here today that we would encourage to share your views or questions with the senator. And if you do, just please introduce yourself and your company. But that's the purpose of the roundtable, so please feel free to speak up.
And if I could just say, first of all, I'm Carrie Clark Phillips, here on behalf of Americans for Free Trade and the Tariffs for the Heartland campaign. And I want to thank you so much for being here. This will be our 15th town hall since we launched in September. And we brought together groups from consumers, retailers, and manufacturers to tell the stories of the impacts of tariffs. So with that, I'd like to say thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks,
I too want to thank you. My name is Pam Johnson and I farm in Lloyd County, 6th generation farmer, past president of the National Farm Bureau Association. I think for me, the uncertainty, especially now as we're going to the field to plant crops, is just killing us out there. And the promises that these trade agreements would get done in some kind of logical order, and it seems like now everything is up in the air. And the uncertainty with how we've been asked, is it possible to get USMCA passed this session? I guess that would be my question to you. But for me, a farmer's income, 33% of our income depends on trade. And after we saw communities revitalized with the ethanol industry, this was to be our next big thing that we could work toward. And I think the biggest concern I have is the next generation. Lived through the 80s farm crisis, saw parents tell their kids don't come back, and I'm starting to see that now with the uncertainty. If you've got a great job in Chicago or anywhere else, why would you quit right now and come back when you're not sure if you're going to make a living? And when the University of Illinois at Champaign comes out with documents this last month to say, this is the data, and if you plant corn, you're going to lose this much money per acre, and if you plant beans, you're going to lose this much money per acre. I have never gone into a season planting a crop having to keep that in mind. And so it is just imperative for us to show Iowans that there is some certainty and that we can move forward, and that we're not giving a pass to all our competitors around the world. Great, thanks.
Did you want to do introductions first and then do?
We can, yes.
Why don't we, yeah, that'd be great. And then I'll come back and address some of these concerns. So Pam and Carrie. Yeah, thank you.
I'm John Heistoffer, farmer from about 35 miles south of here, and chairman of the American Soybean Association.
I'm Nicole Howard, I'm with the Association of Equipment Manufacturers.
Hey, Senator, I'm Mike Ralston with ABI Ag Association Business News.
My name is Steve Noah. I'm on the board with Carrie and Angela, and I have been doing international business since 1991.
And I'm Jeff Quick with Cedar Ridge Distillery, and we've been doing international business since last July. Poor timing, by the way.
I'm Barbara Solberg. I am with the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance. We represent 1,200 business members in the Cedar Rapids, Iowa City metro area, and these two gentlemen are two of our members that have stories to tell that I think really shine a light on this. And I would echo what Pam said about the certainty. Business likes certainty just like farmers do, and so the quicker this is resolved, the better it is for business.
Mark Fenney, Profile Americas in Cedar Rapids. We've been exporting for 26 years
I'm Mark Perriott, responsible for operations here at Kinsey.
Brian McCown with Kinsey Manufacturing. I'm Daniel Heddy, handle policy for the Iowa Farm Bureau Federation. I'm here on behalf of our farmers throughout the state. We're a little busy right now planting, so they just asked me out here to speak on their behalf.
Kip Eidelbergels and the,
Richard Dix, I've been here at Kinsey for 6 years. I'm the Senior Director of Supply Chain.
Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm Susie Kinzabov-Beach, president of Kinsey and second generation owner.
I'm Marcia Kinzenbaugh, and I'm involved in various roles at Kinsey Manufacturing and related to these two.
And I'm John Kinzenbaugh, and I just tell everybody I've been here 54 years.
We're very glad for it.
We've been exporting, John, since the early 1980s.
Correct. Right.
I do want to go back and thank you all very much for being here and thank you for hosting. We really appreciate this and the opportunity to get everybody together. And Pam, what you have brought up has been echoed by many of our farmers across the state. No size limit, small, large, whatever. We all know the pressures exist out there, and the certainty, you're absolutely correct, is a big concern. And with commodity prices the way they are, it is, of course, significant interest that we get these trade deals done. So the USMCA, I do think that it will be completed in this Congress. And it's imperative, I think, especially not only if you look at economics, just making sure that we get it done sooner rather than later, but politically, the president wants to see this done. People want to see this done and be able to walk away and say, look, we did something good for our manufacturers, we did something good for our farmers. It's a win for everyone, and not just Republicans, not just Democrats, but all together, this is a win for our country. So everybody wants to see it done, and I do think that we'll see this coming up. I think you can never say for certain because there are so many things that can happen, but this is one that I feel very good about. So I'm glad we've seen the progress that we have. I still do get concerned about the tariffs, and I'm sure some of you will be able to provide feedback on tariffs. I'd like to hear some of those stories and understand that, because I love to go back and share with either, Rep. Lighthizer, Trade Rep. Lighthizer, and the president, just what I'm hearing directly from our individuals in Iowa, because those stories do make a difference when you're laying it out for them, not just X dollars and Y dollars, but this is a person, this is a family that is impacted by the tariffs. So, perhaps we could hear some of the issues and challenges you're facing. So this was a great example. Thank you. I do hear a lot from our young and beginning farmers. We had Farm Bureau out not long ago, and we had a young family that was just entering the farming business with his folks, and he now has had to take employment off of the farm. He cannot farm full-time right now, so his father will continue with farm operations, and in the meantime, he is working to get additional income for the family by taking a full-time job off of the farm. I'm hearing a lot of those stories, but yes, so that's important. Thank you. So maybe others want to share some challenges.
Senator, I'll go the other farmer here. We've spent last 35, 40 years the soybean growers have trying to cultivate that export relationship with China, and we spent hundreds of millions of dollars. Along with the government has also spent money through market access and market development. So, all those funds just seem like they've been lost because we're back where we started. 60% of soybeans are exported in the United States, and 53% of those went to China. So to lose a customer like that has been really upsetting. yes, we were down a couple dollars a bushel last year in the market facilitation fee, which was great. But we did sell those soybeans, and now they're all stacked up, and we're going. I mean, we got markets, but they're small compared to those things. And to go along a little bit with what Pam said, in the Dakotas, they couldn't get rid of their soybeans this fall. And so they're planting 28% more corn this year, because at least they can go to an ethanol plant or somewhere and get rid of it. They couldn't even get rid of their soybeans, because they all went out to the Pacific Northwest. So it's been pretty tough on the farming community. And to go right along with that, if I can take just another second, we may be the soybean crop that we're losing money on, but the steel and aluminum tariffs hurt us on equipment, on our grain bins, our livestock facilities, so that we're getting, and even our livestock, we need a lot of pork to China, and hopefully that's gonna pick up because of, I hate to say this, African swine flu, but it all adds in.
Yeah, it sure does. And with the steel and aluminum tariffs as well, especially what we see with Canada and Mexico, the Section 232 tariffs, which it's national security. And I disagree with utilizing that section for national security when it comes to Mexico and Canada. I still have yet to be convinced of the reasoning behind using that section on, for tariffs with our neighboring partners in trade. So Rob Portman and I, and we do have a number of other co-sponsors as well, but we do have a bill that would address that and the utilization of Section 232. It would not be up to the president to determine what is a national security issue. It would be left up to the Department of Defense. That's who determines what our national security interests are, where we need to provide for defense. So it makes sense to me that it would be the Department of Defense determining what countries are a threat to our national security, not the President of the United States. So this would pull back the power from the administration, place it where we believe as Congress it should be. That determination would come then through the Secretary of Defense. So we have not been able to move yet on that legislation, but we would like to see that enacted so that this is not used against what we would consider good trade partners in the future. So it's not helping right now, but we do hope that we can address that issue and alleviate future concerns about what is and what is not a security threat to the United States. But I don't believe that that has been properly used, especially with Canada and Mexico.
I'd like to jump in on behalf of Kinsey. John mentioned before, he's been here for 54 years. He's had a partnership with the American farmer as a manufacturer and as a farmer himself. And really, from Kinsey's perspective, we really see ourselves as seeing two effects from this whole situation. One is, of course, our customer is ultimately the American farmer. And you heard from this gentleman over there. If they're insecure, they're not in the dealerships. If they're not in the dealerships, we're not selling product. And so that affects our ability to sell product. At the same time, the Section 232 tariffs touch any product out in our beautiful arena. It's all steel, and steel is the blood that flows through this factory. We've seen an unprecedented increase in the commodity price of steel, and if we were able to go back and 6 years ago when the ag economy was booming, his decision to pass along those costs to the end user, maybe that was agreeable and amenable, but today we can't pass those costs on. So that Section 232 is taking a bite out of our ability to be profitable as a business. It's taking a bite out of our ability to reward our employees. It's taking a bite out of our ability to develop new innovative products. We have to make hard decisions in this business because that money simply isn't there. It's gone to increase commodity costs. And so, really from, I think the face of it is that it's all well and good to hear sound bites on national TV about sticking to the Chinese, or this is a tax on the Chinese and all that other stuff. The bottom line is we're paying the price, and I think that Donald Trump and our political friends all need to understand that this impacts Kinsey in two ways, and everybody at this table in an individual manner. I think that's critical. That's what we would like you to take back to Washington.
I'll second what Richard said. You and your staff have done such a great job of keeping in touch with us and so many people about this. We're grateful for your leadership. But certainly here at Kinsey, such up Hawkeye Steel, any of these companies that use a lot of steel, it's a killer, and they can't pass it on, as Richard has said. And so we're grateful for your leadership in trying to get this done. And as everybody here knows, you have been a leader, but we're all eager and anxious to see it get done.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And cost to, you're right, cost to the end user, it all gets passed on, or the employers, manufacturers are taking a huge hit. So, we've recognized that, and we've shared some stories, and that's why taking back some of the issues that we have here is really important.
And I would add, will Mexico and Canada ratify the new USMCA if the 232 tariffs are still in place?
That's a really good question. I think they would be very hesitant to do that. So I think going back to what the president had mentioned a number of months ago, that, if there's a deal in place and we do essentially have the USMCA done, then those tariffs need to be lifted.
And it also goes to point that I traveled this year in Europe, in South America, and in Africa, and the question is being asked, is the United States and our United States companies reliable trading partners because of the tariff questions?
Right, exactly. Other thoughts?
Question.
Yes.
Okay, Bob Strider, agronomist, and I've been in China, I've been in Russia, South America, Ukraine. I see some of the competitiveness of nature. So Chinese are notorious copiers and not adhering to IP. So how much of the dispute then centers over that?
Much of it, yes, absolutely. And I think that's where so many of the hang-ups are right now is, even if we have an agreement, then how do we enforce that with China? Because they are notorious about theft of intellectual property and so forth. So how do we enforce that? What is the mechanism moving forward?
See, it's just in their culture too.
It is, it's very much so. They are in it for the long game, and yes, and I think that's why it has taken even this long to actually come to an agreement. And then the last little nitty-gritty will be over, okay, well, if China is caught stealing IP or technology, forced transfer of technology, then what mechanism do we have as the United States to push back against them? So that's letting the trade rep and those folks work that out, but that is the sticking point.
Okay, and I've got one more point. It's too explosive to bring out here, but I need to get some information to you.
Okay, yeah, you bet.
I attended the 2014 Sustainable Ag Food Security Conference held in Beijing.
Okay.
The top 7 generals of the Chinese Army were in front of the audience.
Mhm.
And we worked with FEMA director over there. So, but I've got some.
Good, thank you, appreciate that.
I'll go next. We're in a sort of unique position. We supply people who then convert it to the finished product that they sell. We supply a lot of different markets. So I get to see people who are participating in automotive, or graphics, or stationery, or furniture, lots of different customers. So I can give you 3 different examples that we see how we're being impacted and our customers are being impacted. The first would be in a commodity product that we actually gain business. As soon as the tariffs go away, we're going to lose it because it moved to China for a reason. But 3 of our customers gained business, which then came to us. 2 of those customers are actually in Mexico. So we had a short-term gain, right? But you can't count on it. You don't go out and hire people because as soon as this tariff goes away, which hopefully is soon, that business is gonna drift away. A second example would be tied to steel. We have a customer who laminates our product to steel, and they're actually losing market share to European companies because of steel prices. And we're being approached by a company in Asia who is not subject to tariffs for steel to try to come into the market and take more share yet again. And then the third would be one where it's just a potential. About we've got a customer who's really heavy into automotive. About 1/3 of their volume goes into China. They have been threatened with the next round of retaliatory tariffs, but they haven't been subject to them yet. They have set up all the supply chain to source this product from Korea the moment they get listed. And that business is going to go from Iowa, and it's going to go from New Jersey like that. The minute that they've set it all up. So it's hard to predict where this all ends up. It sounds simple. Tariff of 25%. The consequences are often convoluted.
And the way we've had this described before, and as we're visiting with folks, it's almost like it's like a shell game, really. Maybe China's not purchasing soybeans from us, or if you could use the example of steel. It's not being sourced from one place now because of tariffs, so they're drawing from another, and just. It really is a shell game. Everything is shifting right now. So we do need stability. We need that predictability, all the way from the end user, the farmer, the purchaser, all the way to the manufacturer. So yeah, the sooner we can seal these deals, the better off we'll be. And then it goes back to international trade, other countries wondering if we'll be a good trade partner. That's why we just need to get these deals done, stabilize what we're doing here in the United States.
Talk about whiskey for a second?
Absolutely.
It's all ties together, bourbon's made from corn, and here we are. Most distilled spirits are made from corn, and before the distillery, our distillery was open, we Iowans were importing 100% of the $300 million worth of spirits we consume here a year, and we have always felt like we should be exporting a product like this, not importing it. It was the beginnings of an industry which I think is actually off to a pretty good start in Iowa. We started in early 2018. We decided to initiate a 3-year expansion into kind of an export program. We didn't want to, we knew it was going to be quite a learning process, a process most of you have been through, but we were just getting our feet wet. Lined a couple container loads up for Europe and went through the process of getting the right glass and the right packaging and the labeling and the consulting that goes with all that and the paperwork. And right before they shipped, the steel and aluminum tariffs came in, and then Europe put a retaliatory whiskey tariff on American whiskey, and we had to cut the price by about $25,000 a container to keep the order, because at that point it would have been better to keep the order than to eliminate it with all the investment we've made. So since these tariffs came in, we've been treading water. We backed off on, we were going to go into China. We backed off entirely on that. Treading water in Europe, just sent another container over, but we're waiting to see if we can get this behind us and get back to making some money and export some products.
Yeah, it's amazing all the different industries that are impacted, every last one of our industries.
And Senator, I just to piggyback off what you had mentioned earlier, when I hear from our membership in all 99 counties across the state, you talk to the average farmer and they just want to compete, right? And they just want to be able to operate in an open market. I think everyone in here probably wants to just be able to compete in an open market where the best product wins, and with American farmers always going to have the best product. I think it's widely understood that China's been a cheater for a long time. You see that with the WTO rulings that have come down the last couple of weeks. So there's an understanding that things need to be corrected. But I think if we can just compete on an open market, that's why USMCA is so important. And I know that you and your staff and you all understand that, but that is an open market where we can compete successful. If we have that globally, I think that's all farmers want. They don't want special treatment, they don't want, anything more than what is fair and honest. And I think that's what we're all asking for here is just an open market where we have the opportunity to compete. And, I work with them every day, American farmers, Iowa farmers are the best people I know, and I know that they'll always be successful. So that's the message I think we would ask you to take to Ambassador Lighthizer is just give us a chance, to go out there and compete with everyone else in a free enough market. And that's the message I think we need to be communicating to the Chinese as well. Is, that's what's fair and honest, and that's all we want.
Right, kind of the mantra we've had is trade not aid. Trade not aid. The American farmer doesn't necessarily want the government to provide them their living. They want to be able to grow and produce and provide that to the world. So I'm very proud of being from Iowa and our stance, and I know that a number of us, when we met with the president last year, that was our mantra, trade not aid. And the president even made that comment. He's like, wow, this is the first time I've had a group come in actually saying they don't want the money. They don't want the government to give them the money. So that does make an impact. We just have to continually reinforce that with the president, that, our job is to grow, feed and fuel the world. So that is what our plan is. We'll keep communicating that to the president and make sure that he gets these deals done in a timely manner.
Senator, you and I have talked a lot about tariffs, taxes, and not more than that. And for our industry, tax reform was a big boom. A lot of our companies have realized additional capital that they are investing back into their facilities and new manufacturing lines, investing in R&D, hiring more people. And the impact there, I know the president is very proud of tax reform, the impact that it's had on the economy. But we have some member companies, in fact, we talked to one a couple of weeks ago, they realized $100 million in additional capital thanks to tax reform that has been wiped out as a result of the higher steel prices. So I think if there's a message on behalf of our industry, in addition to everything else that folks have said here, is that tax reform was great. It really turbocharged our industry. And the tariffs and the trade war is really risking undermining all of that. And that's a great accomplishment for him. And let's try and benefit from it, not wipe away those benefits. And I know you communicated that. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely, I appreciate that. And you're right, when I speak with the president too, I always use a number of Iowa examples. Like I said, asking for stories and impact to real Iowans. That's what makes a difference. I can present lots of information, black and white numbers, but it is the stories. How is this impacting someone in Red Oak, Iowa? What is it doing to that equipment dealer? What is it doing to that manufacturer? And what is it doing to that end user again? So giving specific examples on how some of the policies that are in place are not helping but actually hurting. So we'll continue to gather those examples and communicate those to the president.
Anyone else from around the room care to make a statement or ask a question?
Just to make a comment, I'm Dick Gallagher, and I farm not very far from where John does down southeast Iowa. And I've been very involved with Iowa Corn and the U.S. Grains Council. And the Grains Council is always looking for new markets around the world, and especially now with the trade issues that are going on. If we find new markets to develop them, how can we guarantee if we're going to have these trade wars that we're going to be reliable? And it kind of comes on with some of the other questions, but it's very important to us, not only as a farmer, but a commodity organization.
No, and I think that's a very valid point. And what is being developed right now, and I've had similar discussions with Bob Lighthizer about that, because they are working on a number of other deals around the country as well. We tend to or around the world. We tend to focus very heavily on USMCA and China because those are the ones that impact us the most. But continually developing new markets is important for all of us. As we become better at our jobs, whether it's equipment manufacturing or higher yields every year from the farm, we've got to have somewhere for that to go. We can't consume it all here in the United States. There are growing markets out there. A lot of countries now that are becoming wealthier and they need additional lean sources of protein or lean protein. And so we have opportunity out there. So what this administration is trying to do is develop those markets. And I would say just at least rest assured, if it's this administration that's developing those trade agreements, then they will agree with those trade agreements. What can happen in the future is if there are different administrations that want to change agreements as they sunset, they will probably do so. But what we want to do is develop those markets right now, make sure that they benefit the countries that are involved in those trade agreements, and just stay on that path. I do have concerns about where we might stand with other people around the globe. As we're going through some of these negotiations, they may be concerned. We may be next. If they're good, solid agreements and they're good trade partners, then we shouldn't have those worries. You know, NAFTA, I think, benefited the American farmer. I think it was a good deal for the American farmer. Hopefully what we come out with in the USMCA is an even better boon for the American farmer. But, you know, just understand as Congress, we'll try and do our part as well to be good communicators with those other countries as we work on developing additional trade agreements. We'll do the absolute darn best we can. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Senator Ernst, I think a lot of expectations were raised when Governor Branstad was appointed to be the ambassador. And I wonder if you know what advice he may be giving to the president, or is the president seeking his advice? And how is he helping matters?
You bet. And I will tell you, because I do get asked that quite a bit about our former governor, Terry Branstad, and now that he's ambassador to China. And what I can tell you is that we would not be nearly as far along with China as we are right now if we did not have Ambassador Branstad in that position. He is involved in making sure that the communications are flowing, and he can be an honest broker, you know, from this administration to President Xi, where others may have felt uncomfortable about visiting with President Xi about certain issues and President Xi's administration. Because Ambassador Branstad knows a number of them, especially those that serve in the Department of Agriculture, you know, he feels like he can stand up and say, no, this is what our administration wants, this is what we're going to accept, and be that honest broker. So I'm thankful that we have Ambassador Branstad there. He's been very, very helpful. And I had mentioned this to then Governor Branstad when he was being appointed into that position. I said, I just know there's a time and a place and a reason behind everything. And I said, you know, I know that you're the right person at the right time. And truly, he has been a blessing, especially as we move through these trade talks. And of course, there are so many other issues he's involved in, whether it's national security or so forth. But I think we are very blessed as a nation to have Governor Branstad serving as the ambassador to China.
As an example of what can happen, I go back to one of the first farms that I bought, the one that I live on, and I gave roughly $3,000, $3,200 an acre for roughly 160 acres. Some 5 to 7 years later, I bought an identical type of ground, but rolling hills right here east of the plant, and I gave under $900 an acre for it. So you see it dropped way below a third in those 4 or 5 years. If we don't get this thing turned around, I predict there's going to be a lot of farms and a lot of things change hands in the very near future.
And that is quite possible. That's quite possible.
Senator, may I ask, you know right now more than it's going to take a huge bipartisan effort. Can you talk about sort of the role that you're playing there and also what we in the room can do to help bring others to be able to make this happen?
I think, well, and thank you. I think it's really important because this will be a bipartisan effort. But you will see there are many supporters in the United States Senate for the USMCA, and I think that's very positive, that when it comes to trade, there are quite a few of us that actually can find a way to get along, come together and collaborate on issues like this. So this is one of those rare bright spots, I think, that we see as a nation when we seem to be so divided, that we actually can come together and work on an issue like this because it benefits our entire population. So that is really important. What I would ask of you is that I think you will find great support with the Iowa delegation, but we need you to reach out continually and make sure that you are talking to every member of our delegation and ensuring that they will be supporting the USMCA. That's really important. I know that you'll have Senator Grassley's support, my support on the USMCA. I don't want to speak for the folks in the House, but I hope they see the benefit to Iowa and the USMCA as a whole across the United States. So please be reaching out to them. And if you are affiliated with folks in other states as well, like with our Soybean Association, so forth, make sure you're encouraging all of those other folks to reach out to their members as well. So it's important that everybody is communicating that we need to get this done, we need to get it done in a timely manner. Very, very important. We don't want anyone in our Congress to think this is something that, we can wait on this. Okay, we can't wait on this. So the minute the clock starts ticking, we have that time frame to work with. We need to act within that time frame and get the deal done. So please communicate with members that might be in other states, or if you know of constituents in those other states that are willing to reach out on behalf of this trade agreement. I think it's smart to do that. And again, I would ask also that the individual stories that you might collect, please share those with me, share them with my staff, because that is such an important part of what I share with the administration. It truly is storytelling. But it's also important that I'm able to share those examples with other senators that may not be from states like Iowa. I make no bones about it, like Kirsten Gillibrand is a very good friend of mine in the United States Senate. She and I have very, very different political views, but she is a good friend. So when I can go to another senator, and she's from New York, so it's a very different state than Iowa, when I can go to Senator Gillibrand and say, this is an Iowa family, and this is how they're being impacted by the tariffs, and this is how they're being impacted by not having the USMCA done, then she can get it. She understands the impact to a family or maybe an individual. That's why those stories are so important, because our states are so diverse in our economies and our populations, and if we can share stories about individuals, families, employers, that's what really has meaning to so many of us. It's not just like I said, the black and white numbers. It's the actual faces and people behind those numbers that make the difference. So that's what I would ask.
Do you think the president's beyond threatening to withdraw from USMCA or withdraw from NAFTA, because that just makes us shudder here in Heartland?
Yeah, I can't speak for what the president might or might not do. I think that's pretty obvious at this point. But he has that style of, well, if you call it a style, of negotiating, where he does toss out probably the worst possible scenario. But what you do see is he does get results from that. There are a lot, I think, significant progress too made with the Chinese, because he knows when they're in a bad situation, and China is in a bad situation right now with the African swine fever and some of the shortages that they see in their own economy. So he knows when to make the right threat at the right time, and then they kind of belly up to the table and are willing to give a little bit more. So I can't speak for him, but I think he's in it for the long run. I think he does want to see this as a significant achievement within his administration. So many of us want to see the deal done, and I'm hopeful, I'm hopeful.
Senator, thank you for giving us all the opportunity in this
Oh, you
small
bet.
group to share our stories and our concerns, and as well, thank you for taking those to Washington. And we look forward to your address here in a few minutes to the larger group. We will be moving to the arena area, the larger venue. Lunch will be served and provided by the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. Thank you, Dennis and team, for that. And we will be having a round table there with Dennis facilitating that round table on the tariffs. And anything you want to add to that, Dennis, before we?
Just exciting first to hear from you again, Senator, to get up there, and after that, we're gonna get that meeting started out there, and our panel will talk about their experience.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.